There we go. All right, what's up? Welcome back. I'm Ashe, and this is the Embodied Mind podcast. I am here with my partner in crime, Prince Bell. Prince, what's going on
What's up, man?
this Sunday?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm still struggling with trying to get my electrolytes balanced, like just right. So I'm trying a different approach, like starting today, because I woke up last night with and some about 4 in the morning, like with some wicked cramps in my calves and in my biceps.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to, like I said, a slightly different approach today, get that straightened out. Because honestly, that's been like the hardest part of keto for me to like really get dialed in, especially I think because I'm outside like sweating so much during the hottest part of the day. So it's like the electrolytes that I was taking in, I was just sweating them right back out like almost instantly. So like, and I know like yesterday too, it was like really kind of affecting my mood.
Mhm.
And like, I mean, my thinking was clear, but just my mood was like, and so yeah, so and then also I think because I was telling you before, like in PM, about how there's some of the trouble that I was having with the magnesium. Yeah, so the magnesium supplement that I had, and so I ordered a different brand, and I'm gonna see if like how much difference that makes. But yeah, other than that, I'm ready to go. It's like this. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about on this week's podcast, so I'm excited to get into it. There was a lot of let me flip back to the show notes because there was a lot of stuff that came up this week. In fact, there was like so much stuff that I had come up that I wanted to talk about. I was like, well, I better split some of that up and shift it to like next week's, like save it to shift to next week's episode. Um, One thing that I wanted to touch on real quick, which I had sent you, we started getting some positive feedback about the show, and I wanted to share that because that was really exciting for me. And although this message came like directly to me, like from somebody that's on my friends list and Facebook, I mean, it's like you're the other half of the show, so this applies equally to you as well. But yeah, so the message came from my friend Neil in the UK. He says, "Hi Ash, I just wanted to thank you for the Embodied Mind podcasts. I always end up watching them out of order, but they're great. Wanted to pick up on something from episode 8 regarding resistance training and COPD. I am a sufferer, and I'm also a Xingyi guy. So Xingyi is another internal Chinese martial art, if you guys don't know. My COPD is always at its best when I'm regularly hitting the kettlebells. Also, you introduced me to intermittent fasting, and that's been invaluable for post oral steroid weight reduction. Next time you're in the UK, next time you're in the UK, I owe you dinner and a beer. Cheers. So I was really excited about that, man, because it's like we put in a lot of time and effort to do these podcasts every week. They take a fair amount of prep in advance, especially to talk about like whatever different studies are coming up. So to get some feedback like that we're having a positive effect on people, a positive outreach, and that's really kind of what it's all about. And so, like I said, that was really exciting for me, and I wanted to share that with everybody. But what do you? How does that? I was looking over the show notes again, but yeah. So anyway, that like I said, that kind of tickled me.
That's awesome feedback from your friend Neil. And Xing Yi is cool stuff. That's if I wasn't doing Elite Chin, I would probably be, even though, well, actually, yeah, I would definitely be studying Xing Yi right now because I had a question come up on Instagram, and somebody was asking me how does how does Guangping Yang style Tai Chi compare to Chin style? And Brian told me there's definitely a bit of a Chin flavor to it, but the power training in Guangping is from Henry Look is actually you do each one, and his each one was from like the Han brothers who were like the enforcers for Wang, what's his name, Shang Jai. So they were still basically doing a lot of Xing Yi. They did the forms, but then they did the standing from each one, a little bit of Shi Li, because I guess the each one or Da Chang Chuan curriculum wasn't fully developed. So yeah, I would definitely be training Xing Yi. It's good stuff. I was kind of stalling because I'm trying to post the links on the social media.
Yeah, well, I think if I wasn't doing Ely Trend, I would just at this point I think I would just be doing BJJ.
Yeah.
Or like at a good just like MMA school in general. I think, kind of at some point I have still in the back of my mind that once I finish the Ely Trend curriculum, that maybe then I'll start pursuing a black belt in BJJ, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, the little bit that I had messed around with submission grappling in the past, I thought it was fun, and when I was fighting, I was more of a grappler than I was a striker anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I tended to focus on a lot of takedowns because the way that they score Sanda, you get as many points for takedowns as what you do for strikes anyway. So I focused on a lot of that anyway. So it kind of like plays to my habits, I guess, which is really like, Ely Trun is kind of the opposite of you shouldn't be acting on habit, is to, it's like, so like Sifu says that it's like training is the process of looking into your weakness. And, so again, like you're not, the idea is to fill up the weaknesses in your game and not necessarily focus on stuff that you're already good at. But yeah, so getting back to kind of what we have on store for this week's episode, we want to talk about there was some interesting stuff that came up as far as like the dangers of using Splenda.
Yep.
And I want to touch a little bit with supplementing with HGH, and then in our research review this week, we're going to be talking about is cardio or weights the best way to lose fat and get in shape. So we're going to talk about all of that coming up. But I wanted to go back and ask you about the book that you mentioned that you were reading last week.
Yeah, I haven't made too much progress in it since last week because I've been focusing on precision nutrition stuff. But it is what's the name? It's in the actually no, it's not in the show notes. What is the book I'm reading? It's on trauma.
Something about the body remembers. Is that what it was called?
A bit. The body keeps the score. Yeah, actually, I highlighted what I was reading this morning. I highlighted it because I want to share it. I'm having like all kinds of tech problems today. Like nothing is like loading. Okay.
That's right. I just edited it out. And
okay, where's the highlight? Why is it taking so long? So I was reading on. Oh, I know what I was reading. I don't need to look it up. This interesting thing about people who have had experienced trauma. They have post-traumatic stress disorder. There was this experiment where they were blindfolded and they put, and this is not a house key, it's obviously pocket knife, but they were blindfolded. They put this house key in their hand and they were supposed to identify the object. And these people like had no sensory perception. Like once you took away their sight, they like couldn't. So like parts of their brain they found that were attached with emotion, like because they had shielded themselves so much from these traumatic experiences, that it started affecting other parts of the brain that deal with like senses. And so it's like you talk about, oh, just get over it. You know, we've been talking about this as far as the topic of embodied cognition. It's like you can't get over it because now you've shut down other parts of your brain. And so I know where they're eventually going to go with this is it was talking about how, so you tell somebody get over it, go get help, go get therapy. Well, then you go to therapy and it's like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's think our way out of the situation. And it's like you've shut down other parts of the brain that deal with movement, that deal with sensory perception, right? So how are you going to think your way out of this problem where you need to move, because it's starting to affect other things more than just your thought patterns. So
Right.
I know, you know, that he's getting into the body literally keeps the scores. The body is keeping score, keeping track of these traumatic experiences. And I just, this isn't in the book, but my friend on Instagram, I thought she's been through some traumatic stuff. I don't want to get into her history and stuff here on the podcast when we're not that close yet. But I just thought it was interesting how she turned to like weightlifting and bodybuilding as a way to cope with bullying and some abusive things in her past, as a way, and now qigong as a way to work her way out of that pattern, right? And I just learned she was like a champion level bodybuilder in Canada. She doesn't know I know that. I accidentally found it out yesterday. So.
But yeah, I mean that's kind of interesting because it ties in with you know the book that I was reading from last week, which is the Smart Moves book, which I haven't made that much progress with it this week either because I keep getting lost like down all these rabbit holes because there's so much. I mean that book is basically like a college course, like kind of condensed down into like one book, and so it's like every time that I get to something where it's like, okay, I think I should understand that like a little bit deeper. So then I'll like go follow up. So you know, like last week that we were talking about how the like cognition and emotion are not separate, right? Like the thought and the feeling arises together. And so I was trying to look into some of like the neuroscience of how that works, and based on like what you know she was writing about in the book. And so it was like I went and got lost like down this rabbit hole on the limbic system. You know, like looking at all these lectures that Stanford University has online from like a well-known like professor of neuroscience, I guess. And so yeah, and you know, as I was looking through that, it was like he was saying how like you know all the senses, including proprioception, are wired like they have to go through the limbic system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the limbic system is kind of like there's like three like main layers of the brain. So there's like the brain stem, which is, you know, like what they would call like the lizard brain, basically. And then right above the brain stem is like the next part that evolved, which is the limbic system, which is where all the emotions basically are experienced, at least in the brain, or where that part of the brain is active during emotion, you could say. And then, you know, you go out to like the higher like cognitive brain where we do like all of our like thinking. But there's like that two-way communication that's like back and forth between like the frontal brain and the limbic system. And like I said, it's like all the senses have to go through like the limbic system. So it's like everything that we experience, you know, has basically, you can say like in a sense, it has to go through like the emotional part of the brain. So I mean, it does tie in like with all the, you know, it's like the language is a little bit different, and I think still kind of like at the end of the day, it's going to be a little bit different. Like if you're coming at things like purely from like a mindfulness meditation point of view, but it's like what the old masters have been saying like for all this time. It's like, like thought and emotion and sensation all arise together.
Mm.
So it's like what you're saying about how like, you know, uh, victims of trauma end up shutting down, you know, part of their brain in order to be able to like basically survive or
Yeah.
cope. Then that ends up having like an actual like somatic. Um, so there's I can't remember exactly from the lecture that I was watching yesterday, but this professor was talking about that there's two different areas of the brain that have to deal with sexuality that differ by the brain regions will differ in size by um, gender, or
Mm.
really we could say by sex. And so, like in people who are transgendered or who identify as transgender, their brain regions are swapped to match like whichever gender they identify with.
Wow.
Yeah. So now for me, I still think that like, is that cause or is it correlation?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like because we know that the brain is plastic.
Yeah.
So when you exercise like certain parts of the brain, they get thicker,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like we know that like in meditation, certain areas of the brain will get thicker based on because they get those neural connections get more heavily myelinated instead of like gray matter, they become white matter,
Mm.
and so they that way they function better. But still, I mean, it's all kind of right, like a big mixed up. Everything is interconnected,
Yeah.
like we say like so often. Um,
Cool.
but yeah, so I thought it was pretty interesting that this one came up that I think actually we might come back and revisit like in a future episode and get kind of like deeper into the study.
Yeah.
But because this kind of piggybacks off like we were talking about last week, where it's like the you know whole foods, right? So it's like
Mm.
the majority of food should going to be whole food based, and especially like focusing on plants. And so it came up about how it was like more research or some additional research on the dangers of using Splenda. I guess the generic name is sucralose, but Splenda is the brand name. Uh-oh. um, so yeah, man, it's bad stuff. Like it's already been shown to like mess with your gut microbiome.
Yeah, figured that one.
Yeah, and so which I know it's like my dad, he has a lot of problems with his gut microbiome anyway.
Hmm.
And and I think just kind of, it's like some people are more sensitive than others to like different stimulus or different stressors, right? And so I think like it kind of runs in my family, like just having like a sensitive gut anyway.
Mm.
And so like on my dad's side, I think I'm the only one that still has my appendix. So it was like my dad had his out. My brother, who's 5 years younger than me, had his out. Um, my dad's sister had hers out. My dad's brother had his out. So uh, and then like some other, but anyway, so it's sort of getting off topic. But he drinks like 10 Diet Cokes a day, and like I know that that's messing. It's just
Mm.
exacerbating because then it's like, okay, so like what happens is, you know, one of the rules of the gut microbiome is to thicken the endothelial lining of the gut. So in other words, you want to have like a thicker kind of like a thicker layer of basically mucus and bacteria and all that, because that's what kind of helps keep the bad stuff out and the good stuff in, right? And so when that lining starts to get thin, then that's where, you know, you start to get like now, like they call it like leaky gut, or intestinal permeability. But yeah, I mean, it basically is leaky gut. And so the more you disrupt that gut microbiome, then the thinner like that layer gets, and then the more sensitive, you know, that's kind of like where, you know, I don't really want to call it like an urban legend, but where they say it's like 80% of the immune system originates in your gut was because it's like that lining, that endothelial lining is what helps keep, uh, you know, things from getting into the body, like as they're passing through the gut tract.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so basically, you know, it's like that's why we're, you know, not everyone responds to like probiotics, but I mean, that's kind of like the essential idea of, you know, where supplementing with probiotics will help to like help restore the gut is because you get that gut bacteria back into a healthy balance and they start thickening that lining again. And then you've got like a more protective layer. But the stuff that came up on this one is was that there's two new like metabolites that they discovered, which like the basis of Splenda getting put through the FDA and being approved was that it was not metabolized by in the human body. But it was because there's like basically there's like two different tracks that you could look at. And this one showed like when the investigators looked at Splenda again, they looked at this second track and showed that it did produce like fat soluble metabolites, which means like that stuff is going to hang out in your body for a long time. I can't remember. Like I said, I think in the future maybe we'll tackle this more deeply when we get into the science stuff. But the reason that I wanted to bring it up was because, um, you know, like I said, like when we were talking about last week, when we were talking about keto and how people start eating like a lot of like branded, yeah, like kind of like, oh, well, it fits my macros, right? So, you know, because it's got artificial sugar in it or whatever, and so as long as it's not glucogenic, you know, it doesn't spike my blood sugar, then I can eat it. It's fine. But there's a lot more things to consider about whether or not just something is going to spike like your blood sugar. And so, you know, you really want to be watching the amount of these artificial sweeteners that you're using.
Yeah,
So this,
something. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Something that we talked about a long, long time ago when I was studying for the NSCA exam was these artificial sweeteners like Splenda is 600 times as sweet as sugar. Stevia can be 200 to 400 times as sweet as sugar. Is it you use artificial sweeteners, you condition your body to tasting something that's this sweet. So then when you go back to using sugar, you need more sugar because you're like, I can't taste anything. And then that's where you get the ghetto Kool-Aid where you just take the bag of sugar and just turn it upside down, or do that with your corn flakes where you got, you know, more sugar than milk, which is freaking disgusting to me. But you know, that's also, and then you know, I don't know if you want to save this until we get into the actual science stuff, but the rat study where they found that you know, stevia could increase certain kinds of cancer in rats like leukemia. That's kind of scary. I remember I had a fear falling out.
Stevia or Splenda?
I'm sorry, Splenda. But I started like uncovering some of this stuff about Splenda back when I was part of thing, this guy was recruiting trainers to help him sell Advocare. And I posted something from Dr. Joseph Mercola about all this stuff, like the risks with Splenda. And he was started PMing me on Facebook about taking down the link. And that eventually led to us having a big fallout. And now I'm the biggest Advocare person ever. Like I pretty much want to punch somebody in the face if they approach me about Advocare, because they sweeten all their products with Splenda, and then I just think it's funny that if you consume, no, that's stevia. Sorry, I was about to say that you could get diarrhea from having too much, but that's from stevia.
Well, I mean, I would imagine, you know, I don't know if they've gotten like a direct connection with Splenda, but I mean, if you get your gut microbiome screwed up enough, you're gonna have constant diarrhea. But yeah, like you know, these new metabolites that they just discovered, like I said, because they're what they call a highly lipophilic. In other words, they love fat, and they get stored in your fatty tissue. And you think about like you know, your brain is like 70 or 80% like fatty, like fatty tissue. So where do you think a lot of that stuff is gonna wind up? Yeah. So nasty stuff. I like, even like I said, the reason that I wanted to bring it up is a lot of people that are doing keto, then they resort to you know, a lot of these like keto friendly desserts, or even like paleo or whatever, and they start using a lot of like artificial sweeteners. It's like, I don't know. I think there's still some good, you know, good reasons why you know, want to like take it easy on some of that stuff. I mean, even so I just found out about a new one. I'm going to try it. Like, I ordered some. It's called allulose. So it's technically not it's not an artificial sweetener, but it's a naturally occurring sweetener, but it doesn't. Again, it's supposed to not be metabolized by the body. So I'll put a link in the show notes below for that if anybody wants to check out about allulose. So I'm going to check that one out this week and try a little something with that, because I don't know if I had mentioned that I had switched to using the monk fruit and erythritol. Yeah, so yeah, the monk fruit, because that's like a naturally occurring sweetener, and you know, the erythritol is like it's a sugar alcohol, and
erythritol.
That doesn't. Now that you say it like that, that's not the kind of alcohol that I want to be drinking. Yeah, I'm going to pass on drinking from that bottle. We'll just pour that one out for the homies.
Erythritol. Oh man.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Are you recovered? But yeah, and then so I want to try this allulose, because allulose is supposed to basically have a better taste, and it's again, it's like a naturally occurring sweetener. I need to look up more on that one, actually. So I'll report back on that one, like maybe next week. The harder you try not to laugh, it's just like the more that it wants to make you laugh.
Erythritol. Came out of somebody's urethra.
But yeah, I don't really like that one that much, because you know, it's like they say, like
R. Kelly.
Say what?
That could be a new business for R. Kelly.
All right. He only selling it to minors.
Urethral. I'll piss on you, piss on you, piss on
And there goes all future opportunity for sponsors.
For R. Kelly.
Yeah, that'd be our only sponsor. So yeah, the other thing is I'm not getting any younger. So I'd been kind of considering like, okay, maybe now is the time to start to go look at maybe starting like some TRT. But hadn't really made up my mind about it because I was like, well, I still seem to be able to. I mean, the main thing is like sleep. Yeah, you got the Mike Mahler's aggressive strength booster. What was the other one?
The other one, EC, estrogen control. So you do a 2-month cycle of aggressive strength, and then a 1-month cycle of EC. Or man, we should have this guy on, but if we have him on, it's gonna be like he's gonna advertise all of his stuff as what is this guy? He's a vegan. This dude is like freaking Superman or something. Like, I want to be him. It's Dr. I can't remember, but he has like all kinds of male performance, athletic performance supplements that he makes. And one of them is like some kind of like testosterone. Testrovita is the name of the cream. You guys can Google it. Testrovita. So you can like put it on under your arms, anywhere where you like have thin skin where you can absorb it. He says to the best places to put it. I can't even remember what's pointing to the balance beam in the 13 points.
The perineum.
Because he said that on Mike and Sincere's podcast, and they were making fun of him. And when I was on there, I was like, yeah, I know exactly where the perineum is. And they were like, why do you know that? And I said, it's in my martial art, like perineum pointing down to the balance beam line. And they were like, oh, yeah, sure, Prince, whatever. So you blurted it out. So Mike and Sincere, if you guys are watching this, like, I was not making that up. That's why. But yeah, he said the best place to put the cream is the perineum or in your booty hole. And I'm like, I don't want to absorb any testosterone cream that bad.
Oh, what? One finger, let's make it two.
Yeah, it was like, I don't want to test it that bad to find out. Oh yeah, my testosterone was 10% higher when I put it up my booty hole. No, thank you. Hey, we could get a sponsor from Testrovita talking about perineum and other things, but yeah, I would check him out because he's got some a lot of that. That's not the only one. He's got like all kind of stuff, man. If you trying to get some bedroom help, that is the guy to go see. I've never used the stuff, but I'd like to try some of it.
We'll drop a link in the video description below. If anybody wants to check those out. But yeah, and then so the reason I asked was because like another coach from my precision nutrition cohort, she got in touch with me through Instagram actually, and was trying to turn me on to this HGH cream. I can't remember what it was called off the top of my head. I thought I had written it down somewhere. I guess the reason I didn't want to mention it like on air because I don't want to like discuss it as if I'm endorsing it, especially not having ever tried it. Because the thing of it is that I'm not that excited to try human growth hormone. Because if I remember correctly, like the gut has more receptor sites than anywhere else in the body for human growth hormone,
Mm-hmm.
which is why like all the modern day bodybuilders have like those huge like bloated. They're just the mantra is like big at all costs, right? So it's like
Yeah.
compared to the golden age guys, like the guys from Arnold's day and whatnot, where it was like they had like really like wide shoulders and really tapered waists, like really tight midsections, and the guys now are just like shaped like 55-gallon barrel drums, with arms and legs because they're just taking whatever they can get, like the HGH and testosterone and insulin, because insulin's another like very anabolic hormone.
Yeah.
Just anything they can get their hands on to get huge. Because actually, I know a guy. He was a friend of mine that he got busted for selling counterfeit steroids.
Oh wow.
And do you remember? Does the name Samir Banu ring any bells for you?
Mm-mm.
So Samir was he was like in the Mr. Olympia circuit, like back. He was kind of there like in the day of like when Arnold won his last Mr. Olympia. So I think that was like 1980. And then like after that was when like Franco won, and then Frank Zane won, and then but so Samir Banu was kind of like there at that transition of like when those guys from like the late 60s and 70s were starting to like get out of it because they were getting a little bit older, and like Arnold was going in to do the movies, and like then the new crew from like the 80s was just coming into it, and so he was on the scene then. And so anyway, my homie was hustling with Samir Banu, and they were selling counterfeit steroids. And he was telling me like like even when he was rolling with Samir, that he said they just took everything. It was like because even they didn't know whether it was actually counterfeit or not. Like the only way to know is if you're getting like the preloaded syringes and the foil sealed like blister packs,
Mm-hmm.
because like those ones are too expensive to counterfeit, because it's like you have to load every syringe and do like the whole 9 yards. So it's like the stuff that is all the counterfeit stuff is the stuff that you buy like in the whole like big bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he was saying. Is like he said they didn't know if it was sesame oil or if it was actually like good stuff. So it was like they just took it and used it all because you never knew like when you were gonna get your next. I mean, I'm sure like at a certain level, it's like you have like a direct connection to somebody who can get you like the pharmaceutical grade stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like at the lower levels and at the street levels and stuff, when you're first getting started, those guys just take everything. Um, and it's like if they can get testosterone this time, they get that. If the next time they get growth hormone, then they get that. And I mean, I'm speaking a little bit like out of turn because it's not like I'm deep into that scene.
Yeah.
I'm only talking from the people that I've known that were. So it's kind of secondhand information. So take it for that. But I mean, you definitely see it like in these big guys now, like the modern dudes that they have, like I said, like those enormous like midsections because they're supplementing with the HGH. Now, if you were taking it topically, I don't know if you'd get quite like that same reaction as like if you were ingesting it or if you were taking like oral steroids and like oral HGH. But like I said, I'm not really that excited to try it, especially because it's like, you know, uh, we don't really understand like the systemic effects of all this kind of stuff yet.
Yeah.
So even like getting into like TRT, I'm not really like. So I'm kind of like, maybe I'll wait maybe I'll wait a little bit longer. Um,
Yeah.
because it's like, the still not 100% sure of like the whole picture. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Just I mean, I'm not into any of the performance enhancement stuff at all, but just from what I've heard, the stuff that's like being tested in the labs right now, that's around the corner, and like 10, 15 years, we're gonna be laughing at all the shit that people are taking right now. Like I'm already thinking like probably in about 40 or 50 years, it's like if you don't live to be over 100, like beyond 120, people are gonna laugh at you and be like, you're a moron. Like you have to have like gotten hit by a train, something crazy, that you didn't like live to be over 100. Um, I've heard that like their work, like the nanotech Tony Stark shit is like legit around the corner. The performance enhancement drugs, stuff that they're working on right now, man. Like,
But the wave, like the wave of the future now is going to be the gene doping.
yeah, yeah,
And actually,
probably.
yeah, I mean, I just saw. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick if I can find it. But I just saw something from Dr. Rhonda Patrick on Twitter this morning. Like when I logged in to tweet out the link for the show this morning. Yeah, right here. CRISPR gene editing successfully stopped the progression of Duchenne muscular dystrophy in dogs. It restored muscle function in their hearts, diaphragms, and other muscles. So I mean, it's like we're there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Of course, this was in animals, but I mean, it was already in. So I mean,
Somebody
and
in
even
Europe is already doing that shit.
right, and that's what like Coach Charles Poliquin. I mean, that's what he's been saying already. Like I
Yeah,
watched an episode of London Real with him, and he was saying it's like gene doping is already here.
yeah,
I mean, that's like, and you're not even going to be able to like you can't even test for that. At least like not right now.
yeah.
But so it's like, I mean, pretty soon it's like athletics isn't even. I mean, you're not even going to be able to.
Won't be able to compete, man. I mean,
Right.
that kid that's playing for Duke next year, what's his name? Like, I can't remember. He's 6'8", 280, 280 pounds. He dunked from the free throw line with two hands, like it was nothing. Like, just took he ran from half court and just took. I think he jumped off of 1 foot and like freaking tomahawk dunk with 280 pounds. I'm like, what? Like, I mean, like I'm already like expecting if I live to be my granddad's age at 87, people are just going to inbound the ball on the basketball court in the NBA games and just freaking NBA jams dunks. Like, oh, take two dribbles and two steps and then just dunk from the other end of the court or something. Like, there's going to be flying.
Right.
Like,
But I mean,
the
I had an
X-Men.
uncle. I mean, we might see where it's like they might have to change the game significantly, like raise the basket to 12 feet or something.
Yeah.
It's like we start having all these. This is like the population of. I mean, it's kind of weird because it's like when you see like an NBA game, it's like you've got all of those guys that are like at the far end of the genetic spectrum,
Yeah.
like squeezed into into one room or whatever.
Mm.
But it's like in my lifetime, like I'm like a little bit shy of 6'1". So like on my day-to-day basis, like I'm still like one of the taller guys like out on the street. It's like I don't see like lots of guys that are like way taller than me. And I think like in my lifetime, I've met like trying to think like one guy that was like 7 foot, like he was like a legit 7 foot,
Mm.
and then like another guy of that was like 6'7". He was a former, like I know him now. He's a former Cardinals offensive lineman. He's like 6'7".
Mhm.
And I'm like looking up like this when I talk to, uh, but I mean, it's like those guys really aren't all over the place. But I mean, when you get them like when concentrated into, into one small pool like that. But yeah, so I mean, like I said, we might start to see some changes where they have to change the game because it's like what? So we start having like a whole bunch of guys that especially if they can get, like some gene doping, before their growth plates are sealed off, and everybody's like got all these guys that are starting to walk around at like 7'6" or something stupid, and I mean it's almost like a different species at that point.
Yeah, but even with all of that, like you still have to know how to use your body with all those gifts. I've been kind of following David Weck. Well, I've thought the guy was a genius for years. I kind of think he's crazy. I still think he's a genius, but people who are really bright tend to be a little bit crazy. He's the inventor of the Bosu ball. So I was listening to a podcast right before we got on, and he's on this big mission right now. Is that apparently all these experts in biomechanics and these top-notch strength coaches say that you don't produce power from the core. And after we get off, I'm getting ready to send him a message on Instagram and say, you know what? I think you need to continue this because like internal martial arts, like Tai Chi produce power from the Dantian. Xing Yi, Bagua, Ili Chin, Dantian Ming Min, like that area, that's where you produce power. That's where the movement starts. And it's all about coiling, the body and the fascia and the body structures. It's all make spirals and coils. That's how you produce power. And I was thinking about like, well, you've got all these strength coaches and these exercise physiologists, biomechanics specialists who say, no, the core, all it does is stabilize. You don't produce power from there. And if they're the ones who are responsible for training these athletes, I'm thinking, well, there's always going to be a need for this kind of training. Okay, yeah, this might not be the most effective way to fight. If you just want to, okay, I'm going here for a year to get some lessons and then I can defend myself on the street. But if you don't really know how to use your body, despite all the gifts and genetic advantages and everything you've given yourself, it's like I always say, it's like somebody gave you the keys to a Lamborghini, but you don't know how to freaking drive that monster.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing that's what separates elite athletes from like the general population is that they have a better nervous system.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I mean, like when you start getting into looking at like some Great Cook's stuff, where he's talking about, it's like, sometimes these guys don't really move that great, but they're like in terms of like their fundamental movement patterns, but they know how to compensate. Yeah, they know how to compensate, and it's like their reaction time is so much faster than like a regular person's, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they can recover.
So, and here's another thing too that just came up on Twitter that is relating to what we were saying earlier about like the Splenda and disrupting your gut microbiome and leaky gut. So it doesn't relate to Splenda exactly. It has to do with leaky gut. It says, according to a new study, married couples who fight dirty are more likely to suffer from leaky gut, a condition that sees undigested food particles, bacteria, and germs pass through the digestive system and into the blood. So, like, I mean, we've talked a little bit before too in the past about like the enteric nervous system, how there's like a two-way communication between like the gut and the brain. So it's like what you're eating and everything is having an effect not only on how you feel, but how you think, how you act, how you behave. So yeah, it's all interconnected. So slow your roll on the Diet Cokes.
Yeah.
So before we get too far off topic, where are we at? I guess it's time for this week's study. You ready for that?
Yep.
So in this week's science segment, although it's like we've been kind of like dipping into it all the way through.
Yeah.
But this week I wanted to talk about one that came up, was pretty interesting. That has to deal with the age-old question: is cardio the best way to lose fat? Right? Is cardio better than weights for getting in shape? And so the study title is Divergent Effects of Resistance and endurance exercise on plasma bile acids, FGF19 and FGF21 in humans by Thomas Morville et al. And as always, there will be a link in the video description below if anybody wants to check that out. So I was kind of hesitant to, like, I wanted to tackle this one, but then I was kind of hesitant to because there was a lot of rabbit holes to get lost in as far as like metabolism goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously, like, I'm not a PhD in human metabolism, so there's a large potential for me to misinterpret some of these studies, but I do my best. And so I spent I spent a lot of time digging into this one, and I kind of like I said, I debated on whether I actually wanted to cover it or not, but I think like the takeaways are still fairly solid, even though like I might not have like a perfect grasp of the metabolic pathways and stuff that are affected. But basically, what happened here was the researchers looked at the effects of resistance training, i.e., weights and strength training, and cardio on three key metabolic markers, and then also insulin, blood sugar, and glucagon. So the three key ones that they were looking at was FGF19. So FGF is short for fibroblast growth factor. So they looked at two specific ones, FGF19, FGF21, and then they also looked at plasma bile acids. So just kind of like a quick review. So plasma bile acids are they're thought to increase energy expenditure in mice. So in other words, I thought they it's like they make you burn more energy, and so there's still some debate on whether or not it does it in humans. So like these researchers thought that it did, but when I started looking into like plasma bile acids a little bit more, I mean, it was like the very first study that I found was a study that refuted that plasma bile acids actually increased energy expenditure in humans. And then FGF19 has been shown to be directly anabolic in mice. So in other words, like I'm not sure if they injected it or if they fed it to them or what, but somehow they gave these mice FGF19 and saw like a direct like muscular hypertrophy. Like in other words, they grew extra muscle. And then so they wanted to see like if it would do the same thing in humans. I mean, they were mostly what they wanted to use it for is like a therapeutic purposes, like to treat like sarcopenia, which is like muscle wasting in older individuals, or especially like sometimes people with cancer, like when they're going through their cancer treatment, they'll get sarcopenia. You know, they lose all their muscle. So what they did was they stuck them on an exercise bike for about an hour or 70 minutes, I think, and they made them pedal at like 70% of their VO2 max. And then like about a week later, they had them do the resistance training, and then they measured like periodically, I think like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, up to like several hours out to measure like the change in the hormones, and these ones in particular. And so there's something that we want to like keep in mind was that the study participants they did two, like I said, they did two training sessions about a week apart, first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. So that could be significant. In other words, they were doing like fasted cardio and fasted training, because it like there's like you keep hearing that like come up like in the health and fitness world, like, oh, fasted cardio, fasted weight training. I do all that to get like my best results on for fat loss, because that's like kind of like what we're talking about right now. Um, and so the results, as far as I'm concerned, were like fairly predictable. I mean, they pretty much just line up like with what the bodybuilders and physique competitors have been saying for like decades already. So what they found was that insulin went up significantly after resistance exercise, which makes sense, right? Because as we were talking about before, is that insulin is a very anabolic hormone.
Yeah.
Um, and then blood glucose, in other words, your blood sugar went up after resistance exercise, um, which I thought was interesting. I'm not 100% sure like what to make of that or like how I would use it. I mean, I would think that basically like blood glucose is going up in response to exercise, and so insulin is going up in response to blood glucose going up, right?
Mhm.
In order to shuttle that sugar somewhere into the tissue that needs it. Because most likely what's happening now that I'm thinking about it is that it's like your body stores carbohydrate, so it's like a potato stores carbohydrate as starch, right?
Mhm.
Human body stores carbohydrate as glycogen, right? So it can store glycogen in the muscles, and then it can store glycogen in the liver. Uh, And what's interesting is that like glycogen that goes into the muscle, that's a one-way trip. Like once it goes into the muscle, it can only be used by the muscle. It can't get back out. Whereas like like the liver is kind of like your internal potato, right?
Mhm.
It's like it's your root for lack of a better, because it's like the whole purpose of a root is to like release energy back into the plant when it needs it. Like it'll store energy until the plant needs it, and then later on it'll re-release it back into the plant. Like when the plant's ready to flower, or when the plant is under stress or something like that. So like the liver is kind of like the same way, right? It's like it stores that glycogen, and then when it needs it, it'll release it to be used like anywhere in the body, like by the brain or by the muscles. So I mean, I guess this makes sense. It's like the exercising muscles are depleting their local store of muscle of glycogen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then so then the liver starts to release more, so that it can replenish what's being used, in the muscle. It can send more sugar into the muscle, and insulin needs to go up in order to bring the sugar into the muscle.
Mhm.
So I mean, like I said, I mean that's predictable. It's like what we would expect to see. And then lactate went up after resistance exercise, which anybody that's ever worked out could tell you you're going to get a pump and the burn, right? Like after
Mhm.
you work. So it's like that's not news. Um, all right. So and then we see that the key difference here that I think that for like when we want to look at resistance training versus cardio was the response in glucagon. So, because glucagon is the muscle or the hormone that helps the liver break down that glycogen and turn it back into blood glucose,
Mhm.
and that one went way up after the session of endurance exercise, like way up. Um, but again, like when we're looking at the results, I think it wasn't until after I started looking at the chart, like at the data points that they had plotted out on the charts, that it's like things kind of started clicking together for me on this one.
Mhm.
Um, because uh, what I looked at was that pretty much all the levels of all the hormones that they looked at had returned to baseline after about 60 minutes.
Mhm.
I think for glucagon was like about 2 hours before it returned to baseline. It was actually three full hours before it returned to baseline, but by 2 hours it was more or less, it was barely elevated.
Mhm.
So like let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good I want to save for the takeaway, because I think what this study helped show is worth talking about. um, For me, like the bad was that it was a really small sample size. It was only like 10 people. And they didn't really look at like a whole bunch of like different populations. So we don't know like if you would get like the same results from a really homogeneous group of, like if they looked at like all white males in their 20s from Sweden versus like the same age group from Ethiopia or Kenya or something like that, or an Inuit population. Like we don't know how much is going to vary by ethnicity, because that could be like, and by gender, those could all be factors that you want to keep in mind later on. So, and then for me, the takeaway, I mean, the worst part about this study was that the resistance exercise program was really weak. It was just like circuit training using like Nautilus machines, which depends on like how deconditioned you are, like what kind of workout you're going to get from that. So that could also be a factor, because it's like the response is going to be proportionate to the stimulus, right? Or you would think so, So so that's another thing but for me, like the takeaway was that, like I said, it's like that this study just kind of like reinforced what like the physique competitors have already been telling you for years, right? It's like uh, resistance exercise is anabolic, and uh, um, endurance exercise is catabolic. Because if we go back to talking about the FGF19, like I said, which they thought was catabolic or was anabolic in mice, and the FGF21, which was basically was a catabolic hormone. In other words, because it helped to increase the utilization of both stored sugars and fats. So, it's breaking down tissue. It just happens to be like or not necessarily tissue, but compounds within the body. So like I said, bodybuilders and physique competitors have been telling us that for decades. If you want to get big, you lift weights. If you want to get small, you do endurance exercise.
Yep.
But I think kind of where we still have some room to play is that because glucagon, probably like his main role is going to be to break down like stored sugar. But what if you're already in a caloric deficit? Well, glucagon does help break down stored body fat as well. So, it's like, and it's a huge spike. I mean, it was like a huge spike over the baseline and over I think they measured like picograms per milliliter.
Mm.
But I mean, it was a huge spike compared to like resistance exercise. So that means like you're gonna get you do some endurance training and you're gonna get like a nice 3-hour boost in the amount of like body fat that you're burning, in uh, when you're in a caloric deficit. But muscle burns more calories 24/7.
Yeah.
Like not just in that short window. So it's like, like which one's more important? Do you want to like raise your overall metabolic rate like 24 hours a day, or do you want to like have like one spike? And then the thing of it is too is that like like with muscle, like you can stimulate some muscle growth working out like 2 or maybe 3 times a week for an hour. Whereas like cardio, you pretty much need to do like every day. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't do cardio. I'm thinking that, again, what like a lot of the physique competitors are telling you, like do a little bit of fasted cardio in combination with a caloric deficit is still important, as part of a good fat loss program. But it's like your main focus should probably still be on resistance training, as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
What
I
do you?
mean, you just look at the name, like it's cardio training. You're training your cardiovascular system.
Right.
So if you want more wind, more endurance, then you do cardio. If you want a stronger body, a more effective by unless well no I was about to say unless you're trying to be a distance runner, you want to do resistance training. I stopped that because I trained runners and they said, you know, doing this kettlebell training, doing strength endurance training made them better runners because I mean if you're doing a sport, if you're stronger at your sport than someone else, you're gonna be better. I mean, as provided that you're strength training is specifically to get better at the sport. If you're powerlifting and you want to go run a 10K and all you do is power lift, probably not going to get better at the 10K unless you know you're powerlifting and working on getting better at that 10K. But if you're, you know, training like you're getting ready for powerlifting meet, probably not going to help you when on race day. Um, Also, I mean, like with when you do cardio or endurance training, I mean, like at that point, body fat is what is primarily fueling that. So, I mean, it's no surprise that your glucagon levels are going to spike because you're probably okay. Let's replenish uh, the energy stores that were used. Um, so I thought it was interesting. After I read this and I read, I can't think of that guy's name, but the book is called Cardio Resistance Training. And there he mentioned a study that took a group that only did cardio for 12 weeks. No, they did it for, I think, 20 weeks. And then a group that did cardio resistance training for 15 weeks. And when they like balanced everything out, the cardio resistance training or the group that was basically doing high intensity interval training burned 900 times more calories than the cardio alone group. And I know it's the book is cardio resistance training. They want you to doing this kind of training is better than just doing cardio. Um,
Yeah.
but you know, that's where you know, it kind of got into the whole promoting all of well, if you do hit style training, you know, it's going to spike your metabolism and you're going to be burning calories for 24, 48 hours past, you know, where if you just do cardio after 2 hours, 3 hours, boom, that's it. So I thought it was interesting, you know, the fact that doing some kind of strength training in conjunction with cardio. So it's like at the end of the day is like, oh, well, just do both.
Right.
Provided, you know, that's whatever your goal is. If you're training for a bodybuilding competition, powerlifting meet, you probably want to focus on, you know, that specific goal and not do all this other stuff. So I mean, a big takeaway is people need to be they need to like really have a clear idea of what their goal is. You know, there's nothing wrong being a cardio queen or a cardio king. You know, if you're training for some elliptical competition or something, I don't know, but if that's what you wanted,
Well, you know what? Actually, yeah, that was speaking of which, I mean, that was like another thing that I wanted to mention about this study that was like a significant, was what I think is a significant variable
mm,
was that they had these guys, you know, the guys that were doing the cardio were doing it on an exercise bike. So that means it was the legs that were doing the work.
yeah,
You know, and we've talked before, like there's just like these things that keep popping up that keep pointing to like the importance of the the role of legs and leg strength in overall like overall health and metabolic health and so yeah, I mean I think that it would be kind of interesting again to kind of compare the results, you know, if they could redo this study and then kind of compare like their weights, you
yeah,
know, with the on the machine, and then actually maybe run somebody through like a kettlebell circuit, and then compare it to somebody doing a circuit with free weights, and then body weight, and then compare different kinds of resistance exercise. I mean, endurance exercise, like compare like just running versus somebody like skipping rope, or you know, like all different kind of uh, like maybe rowing or um, just straight up old fashioned running, and kind of
Yeah.
compare like the hormonal responses in the individuals like across these different kinds of training methodologies, I guess, and see, kind of compare like those results as well. Um,
We got a
but yeah, I mean,
question
I
on this
think,
topic.
huh?
We got a question on this topic.
There we go. Oh, from our listener, Rodney Brown. Welcome back, Rodney. Probably topic for another podcast. What do you think of CrossFit training? Yeah, I mean, we could probably do like a whole many shows on that. I mean, I know a lot of people are like hating on CrossFit. Um, I'm not one of them. Uh, Me personally, I think it all comes down to the coach,
Yeah.
like who's running the box, you know? Um, you're going to get like an entirely different experience across, like, depending on like which box you're going to. If you're going to like Brian McKenzie's box, and I don't know, I can't remember if he's in like San Diego or Orange County, something like that, and or up in San Francisco, if you go to Kelly Starrett's box up there, San Francisco CrossFit. I mean, that CrossFit facility is like bursting at the seams with elite coaches with PhDs and exercise science and all that kind of stuff. I mean, like the kind of training experience you're going to get there is going to be entirely different than just some whatever. And it was like I knew a guy here in town. His name was Ken. That he owned a CrossFit gym, so he had a master's in exercise science, and it was like, you know, he was running his gym like as a CrossFit facility. So in other words, he had like the CrossFit name and branding and everything, but he didn't necessarily follow like their programming. I mean, he still did like all his own programming and coaching and everything, and so it's like that'd be a great gym to belong to. So I think kind of it's a little bit of I mean, it's just like anything else. It's going to be like kind of buyer beware.
Yeah.
Like do your research ahead of time before you decide. Like just because it's a CrossFit gym, like don't make any assumptions either way about whether it's a good gym or a bad gym. Like do your research and find out like who's running the programs and what his background is, and maybe talk to some of the members and try to get an idea of like what the injury rates are like coming out of the gym, and see like again like what you were just saying, like what's your goal,
Yeah.
right? It's like if your goal is to be really good at running a 10K, then maybe joining a CrossFit gym is not the best option for you. If you want to go and compete like at the games, then it's going to be different. If you want, it's like one of the
Go in a box.
right. Or again, like I think probably one of the best things that the CrossFit gyms do overall is like the sense of like community
Mm.
and the camaraderie that they engender like inside their boxes, and the like the enthusiasm, and when it comes down to it, like CrossFit has probably done more for the health and fitness community like as a whole, and getting people like interested in working out than any other organization in the last probably 15 years. I think the popularity of CrossFit is kind of starting to taper off a little bit. I mean, I think it's gotten to a point where it's like it's part of the landscape now. So it's not like it's not standing out like so obviously anymore. It's just people kind of like tune it out a little bit. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think there's some other one. Like, have you heard of Orange Theory?
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
yeah. So I mean, like
there.
that's kind of the one that is because they kind of took that concept of like competitive workouts, and they gamified it.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, I
but
don't
I
know what
don't. I
they do
mean,
there. I know my cousin was going.
right. But you know what actually is kind of funny about CrossFit is I think Instagram kind of stole a lot of their thunder.
Mm.
Because it was before, it was like only through like CrossFit boxes that you'd start to see people like doing like these crazy workouts.
Yeah,
And then,
and the girls with the high socks and the short shorts.
right. But now on Instagram, I mean, those are like a dime a dozen, and it's
Yeah,
not everybody, like everybody's like copying that style.
yeah.
And so it's not really like that unique or special to CrossFit anymore. But yeah, for me, I mean, like I said, I'm gonna give CrossFit their props. There's some things about the upper levels of like the CrossFit culture that don't really sit that well with me. Just from the outside looking in, again, I'm not a part of like that community, so it's like I can't really, it's just kind of my gut feelings about some of that stuff. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave that like where it is. But like I said, overall, I would recommend somebody go work out at a CrossFit gym if they wanted to, depending on like what their needs and wants were, right? And if I knew, the coach in question. Otherwise, I would just say try it out, try it for a couple of weeks, see how it works for you. And if somebody was asking me some particulars, like I might give them some ideas of like things to look for, like when you go into the gym, like look for this, this, and this, right? And then if they're checking off those boxes, then run with it. Why not? What about you?
I don't, like a few years back, I think I kind of used to bash on CrossFit. And then if you ask me what I did, I would say basically CrossFit, but only kettlebells. So I
Right.
saw them as a competitor. Now I'm just like, people, Prince, what do you think about CrossFit? CrossFit is CrossFit. Like if you get a good coach, great. If you get a bad coach, you might not be in for such a great experience. Try it out if that's what you want to do. But I kind of look at CrossFit the way I look at other martial arts. Like this is what I'm doing. It's what I'm interested in. That's what they do. I don't really care what they do anymore. Um, and if people look at my workout stuff that I post, they might say, Prince, you're kind of doing CrossFit type stuff. And I was like, yeah, for me. But if I'm training somebody, they might not necessarily do what I'm doing. They might do something
Right.
else. Um, and like the way that I think it's interesting the way that some of the really good coaches program is exactly the thing that I would do with people now. And that I think it's just because they call it CrossFit. I call it, I don't know, Golden Bell Fit or something. I don't know. But I'm more focused on like movement, like this whole idea of like mindful. Let's calm you down. Let's be very specific about what we're doing here, what we want to do, or just to get away from whatever other crap is going on in your life. And we're just going to focus on building you up, building the body, the mind, through, these barbells and these kettlebells and getting on the floor, crawling around and working on breathing. So now my big thing is like, so the thing I don't like about CrossFit is the whole competitive aspect, even though that's good to, I don't think I could do it. Oh man, you got 10 more in you. I know you can do it. Like there's a motivational video I watched where this football coach made this guy bear crawl with this kid on his back. And I think he's like I don't know, the team manager, or maybe he plays, I don't know. And he was like, I want you to crawl to the 10-yard line. And I think the kid was blindfolded. He ends up going the length of the football field. And he's like, see, you did it. And this kid is only 125 pounds. And I knew you had it in you, Hoss. And then his coach, I weigh 165. And so that part, that competitive aspect pushes people. I like the communal aspect, but it's like you've like made it's like the sport of working out. And for me, I'm like, I'm not working out as a sport. My workout is to get better at these other things that I want to do. For somebody else, they might have, so it's like from that aspect, it's like I don't like CrossFit, and that's where what I'm trying to do is different. This is your goal? this is how we're getting you to that goal. And just, this is something I've been dealing with internally is I can't train people who don't have a goal, because for me it's like I got into fitness because I wanted to be able to dunk a basketball on somebody bigger than me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I want to be able to dunk on the biggest guy in the gym or hit a 3-pointer on him or something. That's
Mm-hmm.
my goal. I can track that there, I can see the progression, and I know there's a specific path that I need to go to get to that goal. Somebody, I want to lift this and tone this. Go to plastic surgeon, get the fuck out of here. Bye. I know that's going to offend some of my former clients that have said that to me, probably at least 50 of them. But that's why I'm not training any. That's why I had to stop training, because I didn't know how to deal with them.
Right.
So it's for them, go to CrossFit, go compete, have fun, and maybe you'll lift that and tone this other thing. For me, I need to, okay, I want to lose this much amount of weight, this many inches, and this is the amount of time that I have to do it. And then we say, okay, this is how much time I think it's going to take to get you there. We can measure this, right? It gets in the whole SMART, what is it, the SMART goal or whatever, specific,
Right.
measurable, what is it, actionable, something else.
Realistic, and time bound.
Yeah. So if I can't do that, why are you here? You're not ready.
Right. I mean, some of that is the role of a good coach is to help somebody clarify, like actually what their goals are. So that's where you get into using like your motivational interviewing skills to help. Okay, like they call like the 5 whys exercise. It's like somebody comes in and it's like, hey, why do you want to, I want to lift and tone my butt, right? Okay, that's good. Why do you want to do that? Oh, because then I'll feel this, right? Or because that. Oh, okay, why is that important, right? And then you just kind of drill down into getting to like really another, because really like like what we were talking about earlier with the Olympic system, it's like eventually it's going to come down to like an emotion, right? And if we can really like identify like what the emotion is, that is the motivating factor, and then that can help, will help clarify like the actual goals and the end result, because it's like, okay, you want to lift and tone your booty because at the end of the day, it's like you want to feel better about yourself. So it's like if we get you feeling better about yourself, based on like these other metrics, is that gonna be specific? So yeah, I mean it's kind of it's still kind of the area of coaching that I'm trying to. I think I've only like just started scratching the surface of it, and it's like the PN2. So it's like the master level like certification through Precision Nutrition wraps up in 5 weeks. Yeah, so I got this week is off. Next week is I have another big case study. I think there's 3 written case studies left, and or is it only 2 more? And then I'm done. So I think I made it to the point right now. It's like I'm at the point in the course where I can fail like all the rest of the case studies from here on out and still pass the course because I already met like the minimum threshold for. But so I'm kind of simultaneously like looking forward to being done with it, and but at the same time, like I said, it's like I'm really just scratching the surface and just getting started with a lot of the stuff that they introduced and had us work on, and motivational interviewing is one of those.
Yeah, I'm really interested in PN2. Of course, I had it through PN1. When we get done, I need to. I'm hoping to take the chapter 1 exam sometime tomorrow night. yeah, so I need to finish reading chapter 1 today or tomorrow morning. Um, but I'm already looking at, like, I would really love to have a program where it's like strictly body weight, like mindfulness, movement, and like really drilling, like working with a small group um, of like the whole PN coaching. I'm all right, but I was like, man, PN2. Right now it's like out of my budget, and
Right.
then it takes a year, but who knows? Maybe I'll talk to JB once I get through everything, and they might say, hey man, that sounds like a good idea. Keep the party going.
All right.
Let me sprinkle some.
Yeah. I mean, I got to tell you that it's it was super challenging, but it's been totally worth it. It really like leveled up my game to um, to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And so I'm super glad that I was able to do it. I'm going to be super glad to be done.
Yeah. I'm
we,
I'm I want to see what I'll be able to do just with the level 1 stuff, because my friend Ted, um man, we should really have Ted on one day. Ted, he didn't even go through PN. He just like went through like the free classes, and he's been doing, I mean, of course, he's also, I don't want to make it sound like he just, he did the free classes and now he's doing these amazing transformations. I mean, he trained like Robert Downey Jr. For a little while. So he's trained like these executive people before he became a digital nomad, and like just runs his online programs from Thailand and Vietnam with his wife. But I mean, just with the stuff that he's picked up, and then he's been training for 20 years. Still, like, he's done some pretty incredible stuff with mostly just body weight stuff is what he's doing now, and then things he picked up from precision nutrition through the years without actually going through the course. So,
all right. Well, I think that's a good time to start wrapping up this week's episode.
yes, sir.
Thanks for everybody for watching. And thanks for leaving your comments and questions. If you have any follow-up questions, like when you guys hear this in the future, go ahead and drop those in the comment section below. Prince and I will get back to you. You can always catch up with us on social media. You can follow Prince online. Prince, where do you want people to get you at Twitter or Instagram?
On Twitter at Urban Acolyte. On Instagram, it's better to, if it's like fitness related stuff, at Golden Bell Training. I don't check the Urban Acolyte Instagram feed that much. Just be honest.
Right. And then you can always follow me at all my social profiles are Ashe Higgs, all one word, and you can find links in the video description below. If it's your first time here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Prince and I try and film one of these every Sunday around this time, our schedule permitting. We do miss some weeks. And if you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating and leave a great review, because that helps us grow. Prince, did I miss anything?
I think that covered it.
All right, awesome. So we'll wrap that one up for this week, and we'll see you guys same time next week.
All right, see ya.